show off in front of friends or communicate with friends or whatever. But as soon as I got home and I got into AIM and I got behind my username, I became the most outgoing and gregarious character that there was. You're able to create this manifestation of yourself in this very fantastical art form. So we hope that avatars can be that safe haven that allow you to express yourself from every different segment of your imagination and serve as your emotional surrogate.
I'm Eleni Jokas, and this is CNN.
10 people were murdered in Buffalo over the weekend in a live-streamed racist massacre at a supermarket. The killer took the life of a dad who was there to pick up a birthday cake for his 3-year-old son. A beloved teacher was killed. A taxi driver never minded giving a free ride to someone in need, just to mention a few. And Celestine Chaney, grandmother of 6, a survivor of breast cancer and brain aneurysms, a fighter, and someone who lived to spread joy and love. Joining us now is her son, Wayne Jones, and the extended family. Wayne, I'm so sorry for your loss, and I'm sorry we're talking under these circumstances. Could you just tell us a little bit about your mom? What was she like?
She was a beautiful person, outgoing, life of the party, strong woman. She raised a single son by herself, She was a beautiful person.
And she must have loved her grandchildren.
She definitely loved her grandchildren.
How many grandkids does she have?
6.
Wow.
And one great grand.
Wow, that's amazing. And I know your family has said that she just would like to spread joy wherever she went.
Yeah, that was her. She just was the life of the party, happy person.
I mean, for she's a survivor of breast cancer, 2 brain aneurysms. She sounds
3
like
brain aneurysms.
3. Wow. How are you dealing with all this?
Day by day.
I understand that your mom was at the store with your aunt, that she wanted to get some strawberries to make a shortcake. How did you get the news about what happened on Saturday?
My aunt called me, and she's like, "Hey man, we're just on Jefferson at the Tops. There was a shooting, and I can't find your mother. Did she call you? Because I guess she thought they got split up." And I'm like, "No, she didn't call me." So she said, "Well, you need to come down here right now, and so we can figure this out." So I got up and went down to the Tops to see what was going on. And when I got down there, it was cops everywhere, people everywhere, and we still couldn't find my mom. So at the time, they brought out like the last of the people in the building, and we still didn't find my mom. So I'm like, 9 times. We thought she was in the hospital, but we soon found out that wasn't the case.
And I understand your aunt survived after they got separated. She survived by hiding in a freezer. How is she doing now?
She's doing okay, but that was her baby sister. So she's still fighting with the fact that she made it and her baby sister didn't.
Yeah. And I know your mom recently celebrated her 65th birthday. When was that?
May 6th.
Oh my goodness. I mean, given all that happened on Saturday, how do you view it? What needs to change? I mean, it's just sickening and unacceptable.
Yeah. People need to change. Like the rhetoric was so high on both sides, even though this is not a political event, but from the political arena, like everybody hate everybody. And don't nobody really know each other. They just hate because what they hear and see. So like even him going down there and shooting 6 grandmas or 7, it was all older Black women. Like, what jobs did them women take from you for you to say, that you doing it because the blacks are taking over or whatever. Them grandmas, they retired. Most of them people retired that he went down there and murdered.
Oh, Wayne, I'm so sorry for your loss, and those words sound so small in the face of the greatness of your loss and you and your family's loss. And I appreciate you spending some time with us and letting us know about your mom. And again, our condolences.
Thank you for wanting to know about my mom.
Yeah, she sounds like an amazing, amazing woman. Appreciate your time. You take care.
You too.
We are also learning more about the gunman whose name we're not saying tonight or any night because, frankly, he doesn't deserve any more attention. Authorities had a lot to say today, almost all of it horrifying. CNN's Omar Jimenez reports.
New details show the alleged gunman meticulously planned the attack months in advance. Investigators saying he's believed to have scouted the store in early March and prepared for a gunfight.
Because of the body armor that he had on, he could have easily have retreated back into that store where there were dozens of other customers in that store fleeing for their lives, which could have then turned that into another barricade and further slaughter.
Investigators piecing together the sequence of events in what authorities say was a racially motivated attack. The Erie County District Attorney tells CNN the suspect seemingly planned on killing more black people if he could.
It appears that way. Again, we need to drill down further.
Federal investigators drilling down further, going to the home where the 18-year-old suspect lived with his parents, as well as the gun store where the suspect purchased the Bushmaster assault rifle. They're also looking into his planning ahead of the attack, including illegally modifying his gun to carry 30-round magazines.
We are going to look into everything that this young man was doing and thinking,
including analyzing the alleged shooter's past. How last year, police paid him a visit after he did a high school project on murder-suicides, according to the Erie County Sheriff. And analyzing his state of mind. Just before heading to the market, he's believed to have written and posted a 180-page statement, proudly labeling himself a white supremacist and outlining the attack. The Buffalo Police Commissioner says he live-streamed the horrific attack that has scarred this community, still grieving over the lives of 10 of their own, gunned down in a matter of minutes. Ruth Whitfield was 86 years old and on her way back from visiting her husband in his nursing home when she stopped for groceries. Her son called and called. No one ever answered.
You're looking for her, you find out, you go home. What's going through your head?
I'm angry. I'm hurt. She was a beautiful person. We're still in the midst of this thing. One of the things that we as a family wanted to ensure is that we call it what it is. It is white supremacy, it is hate, it is racism, it is bigotry, and we gotta call it what it is and stop beating around the bush and take it head on because it's proliferating. It's not getting better.
That's joined us now from Buffalo. What else are you learning about this alleged gunman's visit to Buffalo?
Well, Anderson, for starters, Buffalo's police chief says the suspect was basically doing recon prior to this particular shooting, seen in the area, or at least known to be in the area as recently as this past Friday and as early as months ago back in March. Now, earlier today, FBI Director Christopher Wray says based on what they know at this point, they believe this to be a targeted hate crime attack and an act of extreme racial extremism, but at this point they do not believe we are not going to see federal charges at this point. Prosecutors are working towards that. They're expecting to get to that point at some point later in the week. Guns found at the scene and photographed show the words "White Lives Matter" written on them, along with names of victims associated with black on white crimes. And again, that is all part of that federal investigation into potential charges as well. That would come on top of the state charge he already faces, which is first-degree murder. He pleaded not guilty to that over the weekend, but he is due back in court on Thursday. And lastly, President Biden is expected to be here visiting with victims' families tomorrow, Anderson.
Omar Jimenez, I appreciate it. Thank you. Joining us now, the mayor of Buffalo, Byron Brown. Mr. Mayor, I appreciate you joining us. How are you and the community doing tonight?
It's been a hard 2 days, a very painful period in the city of Buffalo. A lot of people grieving, a lot of people angry. We are a strong community. We're wrapping around our arms around the families that lost precious loved ones. We are lifting and holding each other up and working to get through this very, very dark and difficult period in the history of our city.
I understand you knew one of the people killed, the security guard, heroic security guard, Aaron Salter, former Buffalo police lieutenant. I understand you knew his family. What do you want people to remember about him, and how is his family doing tonight?
Actually, I knew 3 of the people killed. Knew Officer Salter very well, probably knew him for over 15 years, knew his parents, good man, hard worker, cared about the community, someone that believed in protecting and serving the community. Even after retiring from the Buffalo Police Department, went to work at Tops Supermarket as a security officer, continuing to protect and serve the community. And if not for his heroic actions, engaging the shooter and exchanging fire with the shooter, there potentially could have been more people killed inside the Tops Supermarket on Saturday. Ruth Whitfield, the mother of retired Buffalo Fire Commissioner Garnell Whitfield, wonderful woman, met her many times, heard the fire commissioner talk glowingly and reverently about his mother over the years, what a special person she was, married to her husband for about 68 years. He has been sick for about 8 of those years, and every single day, 7 days a week, she went to see him in the nursing home, taking care of him as his primary caregiver. She is a tremendous loss to her family and to our entire community. And Kat Massey, a member of the Buffalo branch of the NAACP, a block club member, an active community member, any community meeting in the city of Buffalo talking about bettering this community and what could be done to improve and uplift the community, Kat Massey was there.
Wow.
She was a constant presence in this community. She will be terribly missed.
I mean, the ripple effects of this, the lives lost, the families that are forever changed, and the community impacts of this, it is impossible to calculate.
Absolutely impossible to calculate the ripple effects. The loss of these 10 precious lives is just absolutely still hard to process, hard to believe. Before this occurred, the thought of something like this happening in Buffalo, the city of good neighbors, a warm and welcoming community, was almost unimaginable.
Law enforcement officials had said they've been hearing about other threats since Saturday's mass shooting. A man has been arrested in connection to that. Do the people of Buffalo, specifically people in the black community, need to be worried about a potential copycat at this point?
Law enforcement at every level, federal, state, Buffalo Police, Erie County Sheriff's Office, are on the highest alert. There was an arrest yesterday for threats. There was another arrest tonight. This is something that's being watched very closely by law enforcement. A lot of chatter on social media, a lot of calls, prank calls, threatening messages, but they're all being taken seriously, all being watched very closely, and this is not the place to try a copycat type of activity.
You told CNN earlier that far-right public figures that promoted white replacement theory are complicit in these murders. Obviously, they will deny that. What does accountability look like to you in that regard?
I think one way accountability looks is to ban that kind of hate speech, that kind of misinformation on public airwaves, in social media, on the internet. It should not be allowed. False information, hateful information, attempts to indoctrinate people in different forms of hate and violence on the internet and on the airwaves of this nation should just absolutely be banned. It should not be tolerated. It should be denounced.
Mayor Brown, I appreciate your time tonight, and I'm sorry it's under these circumstances.
Thank you very much, Anderson.
Coming up next, a former top FBI official on the challenges of preventing these mass killings in a social media environment and political climate that many, including Mayor Brown, fear encourages them. Later, new developments in Ukraine, the end to a remarkable story of almost unimaginable bravery against all odds, the 82-day siege at a steelmaking complex in Mariupol, that and growing Russian losses elsewhere, and possible new members for NATO. Former NATO Supreme Allied Commander General Wesley Clark joins us ahead.
More mortar strikes very, very close. They want us to start moving.
There's a sense the Russians haven't yet brought their full destructive power to bear.
Vladimir and his men have been alert since 4 a.m., fearing a Russian attack.
They were living here in frigid temperatures.
Sounds to me like many of these war crimes will go unpunished.
In Helsinki,
Kyiv,
Kramatorsk.
This is CNN.
As governments ramp up their healthcare spending, companies are investing in everything from robotics to artificial intelligence. And all this change is happening faster than many expected. In one survey, 35% of drug company professionals said the industry's digital transformation had accelerated by more than 5 years because of the pandemic. The Swiss healthcare firm Roche is betting that AI can help it develop new medicines. Its chief executive told me it's a turning point for the entire sector.
If there's anything positive about this pandemic, I think it will boost the digitalization in healthcare. We'll see more telemedicine. We will collect patient data in a more standardized way, and we will derive many insights from this kind of data, both for research and development and also in the clinical practice.
Have you been bitten by the bug of curiosity? This is CNN 10. My name is Carl Azuz. I'll be your explainer-in-chief. Global news. International relations are the key factors. Relevant stories. Everyday people whose action is changing their community. Complex issues explained. We're going back to the future. And 10-second trivia. You get a perfect 10 out of 10. All in 10 minutes. Stream at cnn.com/CNN10.
I'm Barry Hurst, Energy and Sustainability Director at Schneider Electric. Schneider Electric was ranked the world's most sustainable company in 2021 by Corporate Knights, and it drew a lot of attention to what we've been working on now for over 10 years. So I think the important thing to emphasize is that it's a long-term commitment and that it takes a lot of organization to really make big strides. So the advice I would give is do strategy and action in parallel. We see a lot of companies who have a strategy but are unsure on how to implement it, and we see companies that want to get action but don't have a clear strategy. So I would say always do the two in parallel if you want to get maximum impact and really accelerate your journey.
We touched on this earlier this evening, that the alleged killer's weapons were covered in racist language, including the phrase "white lives matter" and the N-word. We've spoken as well about the white replacement theory ideology that the killer apparently believed and wrote about in his rant, which he apparently plagiarized portions of. I want to get some perspective now from someone with long experience dealing in extremism and domestic terrorism, including the capture of Eric Rudolph, the Atlanta Centennial Park bomber, joined by former FBI Assistant Director Chris Swecker. Chris, based on what we've seen, heard so far, could this attack have somehow been prevented? I mean, there were certainly red flags. This person was, known to police and mental health professionals.
Yeah, Anderson, most of these mass shooters are flashing red, especially the young ones like this, where you look at Parkland, you look at here. These are young people who are, at that age where they're pretty vulnerable to media influences, social networking influences, social media sites, etc. In this case, he was indeed flashing red. He wrote about a murder-suicide when in his senior year in high school, and that got law enforcement's attention. He also showed up on the last day of school in a full hazmat outfit. He was acting bizarre a year ago. Always had some sort of fascination with guns. He was evaluated from a mental health standpoint, and apparently whoever did the evaluation didn't see a threat. And that's in light of the fact that New York has a red flag law, which is a very great tool for law enforcement. If they see someone who presents a danger, they can go and get what's sort of the equivalent of a restraining order that will prevent them from getting weapons. But somehow he fell through the cracks. He got his hands on an AR-15 extended magazine and went in and did a most heinous act. And I think it was predictable and it was preventable.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot we don't know about his family and stuff. From the early reports that we have, one of the guns found in his car was given to him by his dad for his birthday recently, which I'm not sure why you would give a gun to somebody who was put on who had some mental health issues and was hospitalized and had interviewed by police previously. But in the last hour, we talked to a professor who studies extremism, Kathleen Belew. She ran this guy's, diatribe, 180-page diatribe through a plagiarism program, found passages that were lifted directly from the one that the shooter in Christchurch, New Zealand, wrote, where 51 people were killed. And that one, he also live streamed. And that's apparently where this guy got the idea to live stream this attack. The idea that one shooter kind of leads to another, that these people take inspiration, what we see as a sickening crime of 51 people killed in New Zealand, this guy sees as something that he wants to repeat. I'm not sure how there's any way to stop that.
Yeah, it's hard for us to see things through the eyes of a deeply disturbed individual like this. But I think there is a viral nature to this and other mass shootings and other catastrophic events like this. The influence of prior events, social media coverage, regular media coverage, I think tends to highlight the cause. And in their perverted minds, they think they're doing something noble. They think they're doing something that makes their life count for something. Yeah. It's twisted. It's hard to get our minds around it, but we see it time and time again. And that's why I think most of us in law enforcement would like to see the political dialogue toned down and not demonize everyone for not seeing things the way you see them and not instill fear in people, because those right wing or left wing, you name it, they have wing nuts on both sides, and they're sitting there seething and waiting and looking for someone to blame.
Yeah. What type of challenges do law enforcement face? I mean, trying to track down and stop someone like this before an attack, is that, obviously, I mean, there can be red flags, police can get involved, but, we live in a free country. You can't just hold somebody because they seem nuts.
The biggest challenge in domestic terrorism is the First Amendment. And I don't mean that the First Amendment is a bad thing. It's a good thing. But law enforcement can't just creep around on the internet looking for threats. They need tips from people. They don't crawl the internet without some sort of predication or some sort of pre-existing information that's been brought to their attention. So they're really relying on tips and leads from people who know and observe the bizarre behavior of people who are percolating, if you will. the things that they're posting, the things they're saying, the things that they're writing. I look at the parents, I look at people that know this person, and many of the other shooters. The Parkland shooter sticks out as a very similar situation here, where people, some people picked up the phone, some people provided tips and leads. So it's the obligation of law enforcement to follow up on it aggressively. I think they just see too much of this and they get complacent.
Yeah, Chris Wecker, I appreciate your time tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Coming up, the incredible story of one of the survivors. He was shot by the suspected gunman outside the supermarket, shot up close in the neck. I'll speak with his mom. He survived. I'll speak to his mom about how.
Mainland China tolerates no signs of dissent whatsoever.
from Kharkiv are being pushed back and are now just focusing on the south?
Well, I think Putin wants whatever he can get. Secretary Austin pleaded with the Soviet or Russian Minister of Defense on Friday to do a ceasefire around Mariupol. And the Italian, the German, the French leaders will all talk to Putin. So Putin is sort of gradually adjusting his objectives, but he wants the South. Now, this is a sort of a bittersweet moment, Anderson, because these incredibly brave soldiers in Mariupol have done a fantastic job. And as long as they were there, Putin couldn't claim it. Well, they're going to be gone. And if so, and he then lays claim and says, this is part of Russia now, then we have a different problem in the negotiations or in the ending of the conflict. Ukraine doesn't want to cede any terrain to Russia, and especially not this terrain in the south that's on the Black Sea. And so this would be really, really unpleasant if the whole conflict stopped right here. Be very difficult for Ukraine after all the sacrifices, $600 to $800 trillion worth of damage, thousands of war crimes. And then the world says, okay, well, let's stop the fighting. And, Russia's a big country. They've got oil. We have to get along with Russia. Please, Ukraine, get along with them. After people have killed your families, slaughtered like that, boy, you're asking a lot to pressure Ukraine. And the United States said we would never do it. And yet our allied leaders are doing it.
Yeah.
So this is a really big moment for Ukraine.
Yeah, and a lot of Ukrainians who I've spoken to say, well, look, after Bucha, it's hard to make any deal with giving them any territory whatsoever. General Clark, appreciate it. Thank you. To an exclusive now, CNN's Sam Kiley just got to accompany Ukraine's most secretive force as they embarked on one of their many missions to root out traitors. He was there for the capture of a suspected spy for the Russians and brings us this report.
This is the former headquarters of the SBU. That's the secret police, effectively, of Ukraine. Now, it was hit right at the beginning of the war with an airstrike. Clearly, from the Russian perspective, this is an immediate necessity to knock out the SBU's capacity here in Kramatorsk, because it is from this location that the counter-intelligence operation would have been run.
We've been working on him for about 4 days. We have a complete picture of his actions, says Sergei. This is Ukraine's most secretive force, the equivalent of the FBI, and then some. Sergei says, we have identified a person who, according to our intelligence, is committing a crime. Simply put, this is a person who transmits to the Russian side, the Russian military, information about the locations of our units. Their snatch team with orders to grab an alleged Russian spy. The SBU says that spies feed a stream of information on troop movements and details of targets to Russia's aircraft and artillery. In this region, the SBU says it catches 1 or 2 agents run by Russia every day. And today's suspect is being watched. He's ours. There he goes, having a smoke.
Всем внимание. Зеленые штаны, черная кофта.
All units, green pants, black sweatshirt, 1000. Special forces sweep in. Resistance, pointless. Two Ukrainians are asked to witness the interrogation. With our camera present, protocols are followed to the letter. He's told why he's arrested for high treason during martial law and confesses on the spot to spying. He says that he was allegedly recruited online, gets orders via a messaging app from someone called Nikolai. The suspect says that he got about $10 for his alleged spying, which included the locations of Ukrainian military units in the town. According to an alleged exchange between him and his handler, the suspect was arrested mid-mission.
Завтра тоже нужна будет твоя помощь подобного характера. Будь на связи. Нужна будет инфа по проживанию военных в районе ЦНИЛ. Конкретика будет утром. Понял, принял. Добрый день, Геннадий. Ты вчера хорошо поработал. Сегодня необходима та же информация. Фото, видео, геоданные военных на ЦНИЛе. Сколько нужно времени для получения информации?
Ну вот я шел.
Как раз это вы и шли, да, посмотреть эту информацию. Понял, принял, отпишусь. 1,5–2 часа. Это было, получается, сегодня, да, в 11:29. Ну, примерно, да. Времени.
There's no death penalty for traitors here, but as he's driven through these gates, he'll know that if tried and convicted, he could spend a lifetime behind bars. Serhiy's hometown is under constant Russian bombardment, so for him, this is no small victory. Russia's hitting us with missiles, rockets and air raids. These missiles hit the coordinates which are transmitted by these criminals. People die in these attacks, soldiers and civilians. But, he adds, the more atrocities the Russians commit, the harder it's getting for the Kremlin to recruit local spies. Sam Kiley, CNN in Slavyansk.
Well, back home, more primary elections are hours away, with contests in battleground Pennsylvania and major turns in the races there. We have details ahead.
We share this place, we all belong.
It's going to be difficult to hire the right people unless you as a company provide some level of hybrid working. And this is not for all companies, but for quite a large proportion of companies, it's seen as being a fundamental part of the workplace offer, part of the job offer. So this is all about providing places for people to work and work with other people, but all of those people may not be for the same company, but just about anywhere. And it's that flexibility of the workplace that's what companies and people are looking for. A revolution is the way to describe it, because it's a fundamental change to the way people want to work and companies want to support their workers. And it's a permanent change, and it will be one of the lasting legacies of the pandemic.
5 states hold primary races tomorrow. There's now some deep uncertainty for Democrats in Pennsylvania hoping to flip a crucial seat in a 50-50 Senate. And also some unexpected terms in the Republican Senate primary there. CNN's Jeff Zeleny has details.
A chaotic close to the Pennsylvania Senate primary. The leading Democratic candidate, John Fetterman, will spend Election Day in the hospital, recovering from a stroke he suffered late last week that his campaign did not reveal until Sunday in this video with his wife by his side.
We hit a little bump on the campaign trail.
It was on Friday. I just wasn't feeling very well, so I decided, you know what, I need to get checked out, so I went to the hospital.
You get checked out.
Yeah.
On the eve of the primary in one of the nation's most closely watched Senate races, far more drama and uncertainty on the Republican side, where it's a three-way fight to the finish. A late grassroots surge from Kathy Barnett is threatening to upend a vicious, months-long battle between TV celebrity Dr. Mehmet Oz and David McCormick, a former hedge fund executive and Army veteran. All three are trying to win over undecided voters.
I earnestly believe 13 months ago that if Pennsylvanians knew they had a better option, you would have the good sense to take it.
Donald Trump hangs heavy over the race, where his endorsement of Oz has outraged many hardcore members of the MAGA movement who are turning to Barnett. Her candidacy caught fire with a compelling personal story and repeated false claims the 2020 election was stolen.
I don't think we have any more room to just pick a warm body with an R next to their name and call that a win for us.
In a radio interview today, Barnett would not commit to supporting the GOP nominee if she doesn't win.
Do you believe that's dangerous for the party, given how important this seat is?
Well, listen, I believe the stakes are so high. I think we as Republicans have to win this seat. And so I believe I'm going to win this primary. But if I weren't to win, then I would support whoever the candidate was that was selected by the voters.